Recording in progress. Hello, good evening, guys.
Hi, Anu.
How are you?
Good, good.
Perfect. Let me know when you want to begin things. I think we'll give it a bit of time for people to join in.
Yeah, I think it'll be 5 minutes because the numbers are going up.
Sure. So how are things over there? I think I'm actually speaking to you from India, actually flying back to Sri Lanka today. How are things in Sri Lanka?
Michael, you want to answer that question?
I guess nothing has changed over the past 24 hours. But yeah, I think it's the same old, same old. Hopefully,
Same old.
things can change around in the next couple of weeks. But at least for the short term, I think we're status quo as it stands.
Perfect. It's quite actually refreshing to see a petrol shed with no queue while we're in India. Quite a refreshing change.
You can carry about 40 liters when you're coming down.
We'll try. There's this thing about flammable liquids on the plane.
That's also true.
Be nice to India. India is supporting us.
Definitely, definitely. So I think the hotel that we're actually staying at, it's right in front of the Microsoft and GitHub building. I think the Marriott, and there's quite a lot of I think IT sector industrial companies that are happening here. Very, very nice. The way that
Bangalore?
No, Hyderabad.
Hyderabad, nice.
Yes.
Hyderabad's the next big hub, I guess.
Yes, definitely. I think it's specifically catered to the IT industry. It's built around that, and it's expanding very fast, actually. All the top companies are coming here, actually.
Sri Lanka also has a few plans to set up a couple of technoparks. I think that's been a vision which has been envisioned by the government. They have had a couple which I think are already up and running. 3 more or 4 more to go, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, because of the economic situation, I think everything's kind of slowed down a bit. But I think there are 2 already underway, which is a good thing for the country, I think.
Yes. I think they had initiated a couple of years back, or was it recently?
Just about a year ago, I think it just made it to Parliament and Cabinet approved. Got approved by Cabinet about a year ago. Ambitious plans, 8 technology hubs across technology parks across the country, not just IT parks, but technology parks, which comprise pretty much education, tech, research facilities, etc. 2 have got off the ground, and yeah, a few more to go. So let's see.
Brilliant. Hope it can come up to the standards. I think over the next couple of years, it'll be crucial to kind of see where the policies go in terms of the IT parks.
I think that's
and bringing in investment.
I think that's the most interesting. I think that's the most important. The policy and the legislation under which these technology parks fall under, right? If you're just making an IT park, there is absolutely no point of doing the same thing. We need to be bigger, better, and brighter than what India is doing. And to do that, we need to have certain legislation, certain policies which are forward-thinking, you know. And that's the most important part of the whole thing. So let's hope that people get it right. There's a new technology ministry coming up, and I think there is a lot of ambition there. There's a lot of expectation as well. So let's hope that they keep it real.
Definitely, and I guess with the impact of that actually rising through and that being successful, the impact on the cryptocurrency space is going to be quite positive, I hope. So we're all hoping for it.
Yeah, again, legislation, but we'll talk about it as we start the session. It's all about
Definitely.
legislation, about how you determine and define cryptocurrencies and under which bucket you put it under. So yeah, so let's talk about all of those.
Definitely. Can't wait.
I think we should start if you have a bit of a problem. Yeah, I'll leave it up to you.
What do you think, Mr. Sanjay? Shall we?
Yeah, let's do it, right? Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. All right then. Thank you everyone for joining. Welcome to the webinar titled A Crypto Playbook for Economic Recovery. We'll be hearing from two veterans in the tech industry of Sri Lanka who have been part of shaping the last 2 decades of the local tech scene. Mr. Michael Sathasiva and Sanjay Mendes are both on the call, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute. But just to give you all some context, the two of them represent Bridge Consulting and Advisory. They're a specialized tech consulting firm that is working on some really cool projects in the crypto and blockchain space right now, with some big news they'll share with you all today. So the reason we wanted to host this webinar is obvious growing interest in the cryptocurrencies in Sri Lanka. Alongside that, there's a larger blockchain technology space that is also ramping up to meet the global industry, as we had just discussed a short while ago. Many of you here are probably investing in crypto, or some of you might be thinking of getting in. So we wanted to get this community of people together and discuss some timely topics related to the local economy, cryptocurrency, and how things may play out in the coming months and years. I want to thank everyone once again for joining and encourage you to leave any questions in the chat window so we can pick them up during the Q&A session. If we aren't able to address all the questions itself, because we usually get quite a bunch of them coming through, we will take some time actually after the session to maybe to send it through, or even through email, and maybe even a session that we have again. So I want to hand it over to Michael and Sanjay for a quick introduction before we get into the session. Let's start with Michael.
Yep, thank you. Thanks, Anuranga. My name is Michael Sathasivam. I'm the co-founder and director of Bridge Advisory and Consulting, which was set up about a year ago. I've been in the IT space for as long as I can remember, working with companies as diverse as Millennium IT and a few multinationals such as SAP, Pfizer, IBM, Cisco. And I also set up Airtel in Sri Lanka. So I've been in the space for some time. I went out of the space for some time, like I said, into the telco vertical, but came back into IT because I felt that's where the area was, that's where the calling was. Bridge Advisory and Consulting was set up along with me, my business partner, who is not on this call at this point in time, Sanjay Mendes, and a few other people. We're a very small consulting company, essentially focusing on 3 pillars. We started off focusing a lot on technology for the government space, trying to take government a little bit more nimble, a bit more agile, and the speed and increase the speed of what they were doing things at. So we were doing a lot of work with the government across various spheres. Obviously, the second pillar is our fintech pillar because of our experience in this space and the expertise in this space. We focus on bringing in a few new age blockchain and fintech solutions into the banks and the financial space in which we work in. That has always been our forte. And what we're trying to do is actually change the way companies, organizations select vendors to do business in Sri Lanka. We find the same old vendors being circulated in the country because of this archaic rule, which says that you need to have implemented or installed at least 1 or 2 in a similar bank. That is old school, that is obsolete. I don't think Sri Lanka should be doing that. We should open up our doors and allow a lot more new fintech organizations to come into the country. And that's what Bridge is propagating. We are at the center of it all. We want to bring in new age vendors into this space. And the third and most interesting pillar which Bridge looks after is the whole area of cryptocurrency and blockchain. We feel that the blockchain space, the DeFi space, and the crypto space is what's going to define Sri Lanka over the next 5 to 10 years. We are already making rapid strides in terms of what we want to do with government, in terms of what we're propagating to government, and what we're envisioning government is going to do in the next few years. We also are doing some interesting things with the private sector, with the banking sector, along DeFi applications, along blockchain consulting, etc. And it's very interesting to note that lots of local banks and organizations are actually embracing blockchain technologies for their core businesses, and that is actually a welcome step in terms of what we want to do. So we work very closely with these organizations in trying to bring in various alternate solutions into this space. That's exactly where we started off a year ago, and I think this pillar is the pillar which is getting the most amount of traction in the market, which is a good thing. We are cross-border. We work across Nepal, we work across Maldives, we work across Qatar and Dubai. We're trying to propagate this whole idea of decentralized finance, decentralized applications, and alternate applications to traditional software issues. And that's, I think, the most exciting part of Bridge. We have done some rapid, we've gained some rapid strides, and I think we're going places with that. So that, in a nutshell, is Bridge. I'm just quickly going to introduce my good friend Sanjay. Sanjay and I go back a long way. We've known each other for almost 10 to 15 years. Our kids go to the same class, etc. Sanjay was sitting in Malaysia and minding his own business, doing as CIO of a large e-commerce company. But fortunately, he had put his thumb right in the middle of the whole cryptocurrency blockchain space. And we saw obvious synergies. Sanjay sacrificed Malaysia to come back into Sri Lanka. And is staying in Sri Lanka for the near considerable future to try and help all of us, try and get this entire crypto story off the ground. So Sanjay, over to you. Yeah, you're on mute.
Thanks, Michael. Just to give you a little brief about me, I've been in the tech industry from the start. I would call myself a dinosaur because my first entrance.
I think you're breaking off, Sanjay.
Was when the internet started, went into Web 2 and a bit of a. You guys are frozen. Can you hear me, Michael?
I think you broke off a little bit there, Sanjay. Could you repeat that? It's not me, right, Michael? It's
not really. I think Sanjay's
okay.
Is it okay? Okay, right. So, sorry guys, there's a little internet instability. So, this is my journey now. I consult with Bridge. We're doing a lot of exciting things in Sri Lanka and in the region, Nepal, Maldives, and in UAE, as Michael said, as we really believe this is the future. So without further ado, just let me give a bit of context of where we are now in terms of the whole situation. Those who follow me on LinkedIn know that I've been quite vocal on the adoption of crypto and blockchain. So I want to start with this slide, right? This is where we are, and this is where we have been for the past 75 years, right? And we see most of the economies struggling, not only Sri Lanka, in a global context, and few which are embracing crypto and blockchain seems to be heading the right way, which includes large organizations to developing nations in the world. So if you look at it, right, a few people ask questions, is crypto a fad, right? Same thing we heard when Facebook came, we heard it when internet came, right? We've been there. And if you see how the internet has grown, crypto is growing at double the speed of the internet, right? That means we will have 1 billion users in crypto by 2024, which is a staggering amount of users. And the other interesting element of this is that 50% of the crypto users are in Asia, right? Headed by our neighbor, the largest compared to the US, which has 27 million. Indian market is 100 million crypto users, right? So that gives a context of where the developing economies are going, right? Most of these people are under the age of 34, right? So these people are young. They are the new investor in the world who's moving away from the traditional. So I'll give a bit of context of the traditional investor where I think Sri Lanka is also stuck on, right? They come from generational wealth. They look at safe investment, right? They are more regionally based as opposed to the crypto investor, right? I don't know whether you know this guy who I put a picture of. He's a guy called Vignesh Sundaresan, right? Indian immigrant, gone to Canada, and he became popular because he spent $69 million and bought BPIT's NFT, right? People didn't even know he existed till he bought this NFT. And his entire wealth was made out of crypto. Now, this is the market we are talking about there, right? Even in Sri Lanka, there are 320,000 users of crypto. And I personally feel it's growing at a rapid pace because they are looking at hedging against a falling Sri Lankan rupee, which has devalued to over 2,500% over the past 20 years. So with that context, what Bridge is trying to do is actually give global adoption, open the doors to Sri Lanka, right? We've been trying to put up a regulated crypto exchange, and to give an idea of what the changes are happening. Initially, let's look at El Salvador, right? I don't think 5 years ago, people knew what El Salvador was, right? And only last week in their Bitcoin financial conference for governments, 32 central banks, 12 financial authorities from 44 countries went and visited El Salvador to see how they are succeeding through Bitcoin, right? He has become an evangelist in the crypto space, going against the IMF, right? Their tourism increased purely when the introduction of Bitcoin came in by 30%, right? Nothing else. So you can see where the tide is moving, not only on the financial sector, but in other areas. So let's look at the rest of the world. Germany, right? Because a lot of people ask me, okay, that's El Salvador, but what about the developing countries? What about the developed countries, right? Germany last year allowed 20% of the large corporations' investments to go into crypto, which brought in $415 billion to the crypto industry, right? Ukraine, during the war, the president made it legal tender for banks to accept Ethereum and Bitcoin because they got over $100 million of funding for their war through crypto to help people, right? This was actually for humanitarian efforts. Before the banks and the governments did, normal people gave money to feed people there, right? Miami, city in US, which is known as the Bitcoin capital in the US, right? He even launched a Miami coin to raise funds for the city. These are things that we can do, right? And he raised $5.2 million for Miami purely on crypto. And the government of Miami, some of his staff are getting paid a portion through Bitcoin, right? Our neighbors, because as we said, we would have been the first because we've been looking at a crypto exchange in Sri Lanka. Dubai passed the first crypto law, right, for virtual assets recently. What does that imply? WasiRex, the largest crypto exchange in India, because India passed a law to tax 30% of their assets on crypto. They just a month ago shifted their headquarters from India to Dubai, right? Just imagine the loss of revenue because Wasir's daily trading volume is $10 million on crypto, right? India lost it purely by short-sightedly adding a crypto tax to their people, right? So this, what you have to realize is the crypto user is global. They're not constrained by borders, right? You stop them somewhere, they will go somewhere else, which is welcoming. And this is the opportunity we see. Mauritius, right? Again, trying to position themselves as the Singapore of Asia. They want to be the Singapore of Africa, right? They just launched the crypto law 24th of February, right? And they are actually attracting fintechs who want to start working with Africa to come and set up there and to address Africa, because they have FTAs with all African nations. Singapore Central Bank, this was just a week ago, forget about the approval of crypto and all of that. They are going into DeFi now. They moved out of, now they moved past the crypto stage, because DBS, you can access crypto, but now the government is working with JP Morgan, right, to go into multi-assets trading with DeFi. So this gives a context of not the commercial, people who are doing like the retail, but the more commercial and governmental entities who are going into this space. So what is the opportunity that we are looking at, right? PayPal a day ago, right, said that they were allowing people to cross-trade their digital assets from their wallets to other wallets. You know that they did a closed loop system where you could buy crypto assets and keep it in the PayPal wallet for the US. They just announced that you can now transfer assets from your PayPal wallet to other wallets, which becomes a huge thing to bring in normal people into this market. MasterCard, I think Sandun is in the audience, is driving heavily in the crypto space, right? They just announced that they're going to allow MasterCard users to buy NFTs using MasterCard. That means close to 3 billion people, right, have now access to buying NFTs purely using their MasterCard network, right? So this is where the brands and the world is heading. Let's look at the opportunity we have, right? We are in a global recession and Sri Lanka is in a financial crisis. Where can we look at to attract this wealth? And this is where crypto can play a large role, because amongst this financial turmoil, there are still millionaires being made in this space, right? Decentralized finance is still offering heavy returns on your investments, close to 20 to 30%, and high risk, you're talking 150% in investment returns on Bitcoin and technologies like that. This creates an opportunity to attract a new global citizen to Sri Lanka. Like Michael said, we are looking at creating IT parks. We are looking at giving investors golden visas for investing. Allow crypto, we are looking at attracting these people because they're global citizens. When Thailand regulated crypto, a lot of people let go of their US citizenships and moved to Thailand, right? Because they didn't want to get taxed in the US. They moved to Thailand because these people are digital nomads. They don't care where they're living, and living in an Asian country is far easier for them because it's much less cost in terms of what you have to live in living cost. What is the start of this? It's a regulated crypto exchange. Why a regulated crypto exchange? You saw the world is closing down onto regulations, right? The whole idea of crypto being used for funds, people having 1 million Bitcoins, all of that, right, will not happen if it is regulated. It's like a bank, right? So people will know, and this is why Binance got hit globally. They were not regulated, and now they are setting up regulated exchanges purely to this, because you have complete transparency of your users, of your money transfers on a daily basis, unlike a bank, because it's all regulated and it is on the blockchain. So your information is real time, which can be given to any authority. Approval of crypto inward payments. Sri Lanka has been wanting to attract PayPal from the time I've been on the internet. That's 25 years, right? PayPal is not coming here, gentlemen. We know that for sure, right? Because our country is too small. We have 40,000 gig economy people, right, who can accept USDT in instead of PayPal, the commission rate would be 0.25 compared to 3% and a 30 cents of a PayPal fee, right? So this is the other advantage, right? They're going to get more money for their buck and immediate transfers because funds come into you within a couple of minutes. Digital asset services related options, right, into the banking sector, like when the stock exchange started, the whole investment banking sector boomed, right? So decentralized finance, gaming, play to earn, metaverse, all of these will start, and even people being able to sell NFTs. There are artists in Sri Lanka, right? If they want to sell NFTs, how do you buy Ethereum to list your art on OpenSea and all of these? So this is where a regulated crypto exchange becomes the catalyst to go into all other areas in the industry. Lastly, going into blockchain, right? Adoption of blockchain has been there from 2017, starting with JP Morgan to everyone, right? Stock exchanges are going there, banks are going there. Recently, Siam Commercial Bank bought BitCub, which is the largest crypto exchange in Thailand, for $500 million. So you know financial institutions are going into this space. So that goes with blockchain-based identity solutions at half the cost, right? Because blockchain-based solutions are not like legacy systems, like Michael said. We are not working on central systems. Reconciliation, again, a big area, because blockchain's whole ethos is on reconciliation. That's why it was built, and those systems are available here. Trade services, Malaysia HSBC and HSBC Singapore started trade services first a couple of years back with trading with LCs, where a vehicle from Malaysia to Singapore takes 1 day, and the LC used to take 3 days. Now they do a LC in 3 hours, right? So that is a little bit there, which are all areas that Bridge is consulting companies on at the moment. And governance, right? Funding, where do payments go? All of that can be like registrar of motor vehicles, death certificates, land registry. All of these can be put on a blockchain for faster and more efficient service for everyone. So this is a little, in a nutshell, where we are looking to take the Southeast Asian region forward. I won't limit it to Sri Lanka, because Bridge is looking at this region, helping governments to move into this area. And the last one is agro traceability. We have cash crops. We are the largest supplier of good cinnamon to the world. We have tea, right? Things like authentication, tracing can be done using blockchain. So with that, I hand it over to you, Anurag.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for that very insightful look into what Bridge does and the crypto market as itself. So I think I had a couple of questions I think I wanted to address in terms of, I think, so you mentioned Michael and Sanjay. So tell us a little bit more about the team, and a little bit more about the team that is behind Bridge besides yourselves.
I think that essentially we're a bunch of six people who are essentially trying to change the way things are being done here. We work very closely with government. We work very closely with legislation. We work closely with the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, the Securities and Exchange Commission. I think there was a question which popped up saying, hey, have you guys actually taken this to the SEC? Yes, we have. We have had very successful discussions right throughout over the past 6 months, with starting from the central bank, the SEC, and also the Ministry of Finance. See, the whole idea of a regulated exchange is, listen, how do you classify cryptocurrency as, right? Various countries all over the world classify it in various ways, and that's one of the main reasons why you cannot actually have one uniform, one size fits all for the crypto space. In the UK, the US, for instance, it's classified as a security. In the UK, it's classified as a money servicing or a money broking business, right? In Japan, it's property, but it's not legal tender. Korea is the same. essentially. So what happens when you have multiple countries essentially not classifying crypto as a universal kind of accepted standard? That's where the issue lies, and that's where most governments, including ours, are still trying to figure out how exactly we should go about this entire process of trying and decentralizing it or regularizing it for Sri Lanka. Right. Over the past 6 months to 8 months, we have been working very, very closely with the government of Sri Lanka, successful various ministers in the ICT space, and also with the blockchain committee, which has been set up by the government of Sri Lanka with a view to kind of explore cryptocurrency and blockchain. We feel that due to the fact that it cannot be clubbed into one bucket, we found that the port city was pretty much our go-to place in terms of setting this up. The port city was set up for companies such as ours to kind of to align and set up businesses in. It's a special economic zone, comes with a very, very fluid tax breaks, has kind of like an open book in terms of how we can set up companies and what we can do with those companies. So we are actually proposing to the government that we should be setting up a regulated exchange within the confines of the port city. We have made our representations to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, etc. And subject to a few other approvals, I think that this should come into fruition in the next 3 months or so. So this, we feel, is a starting point. This was something we canvassed for very, very strongly, because of the simple fact that everything requires an exchange. You need to have an exchange where you can actually convert fiat over the counter into USDT, allow both individuals as well as organizations to kind of be a part of this. The exchange is not an easy thing to do. We worked with quite a few vendors. We looked for quite a few vendors all over the world, but we chose someone who had been already aligned to central bank and SEC regulations and who actually conform to those standards. And essentially what we're trying to do is launch somewhere in the next 3 months if all approvals are given to us. So this, I feel, should be the starting point for what we plan to do. The Port City Economic Commission is playing a very vital role in the whole definition of this process. And just last week, they made representations for 4 or 5 local banks to set up offshore services inside the port city, which I feel is a good step towards all of this. Essentially, when this is all set up, the combination of the offshore banking system, the regulated exchange with its AML, and KYC, CTC, etc., essentially would be the starting point.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Michael, for answering that question also from the chat. Shall we take a minute to break into a couple of questions just so that we can change it up? So I think we have a question from Imran Bilkasim regarding, he's mentioning there are some allegations of money laundering in the crypto world. What measures are countries who have adopted crypto to guard against this?
So I'll answer that, Anurag. Imran, so the difference in allegations of money laundering and all of that in crypto happened in the 2017s, right, and before, because as you know, most of it used to happen through the dark web. Most of the assets were frozen by the CIA and all that. It used to go on the Silk Road. So at that time, a lot of these things happened. Not anymore, because it is now being regulated, and there are enough solutions now to trace back. Like, for example, the crypto exchanges can trace back where the funds came up to 3 hops, which you can't do with money, right? So that is something I would say would have been a question 3 years ago, not anymore, because everyone now knows. Even the purchasers, some of the exchanges, when they buy, they even buy the mining even the miners, they buy through regulated miners because some of them are publicly quoted companies in the US, right? So it is getting white. It's like the dark web when the internet came. There were so many things happening on the internet, right? But now it is more regulated. You have IP tracking, you can trace people for abuse, same way, right? This is a new tech and it is being done all over the world.
Also, just to add on to that, we have countries which have actually set up proper, legislation for AML and terrorism financing. We have AML Directive 5 and Directive 6, which Europe has come up with, which are particular to cryptocurrencies and securing essentially transactions by cryptocurrencies. Then in the US, we have this thing called the one final rule, which has just been put up by the FinCEN in the US, where essentially it has legislations and laws which are specific to cryptocurrencies and combating terrorism financing. So I think the world is also slowly evolving. Like Sanjay said, 2017 was eons ago, as far as we are concerned. Over the past 6 months, there have been so many new directives which have been included into the entire global space in terms of AML and terrorism financing. So I don't think it is a problem anymore, as far as we know. Obviously, there'll be a few slips through the cracks, but by and large, I think we're secure.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael and Sanjay, for that. I think that actually solves Imran's question. So just to, I think, get into it a little bit more, I guess the topic that we're focusing on is the economy and crypto. So what would you say is the current crypto landscape like in Sri Lanka? How many investors is there and how much money is flowing? I know Sanjay gave us a bit of an in-depth answer of the industry itself, but give us a bit of an indication of how much money that we're looking at.
So I'll start with that. In terms of money, quantum, I would say it is easily more than $20 to $30 million at the moment, right? Because there are about 325,000 crypto users in this country, with people being able to trade with their hands tied, right? Because mass adoption is difficult when you have to do P2P trading and all of that. We are still in the first stages of crypto in Sri Lanka. With that said, we have a huge growth. Paxful alone, which is a peer-to-peer transaction company like Bitcoin and all of those exchanges, right, saw a 720% growth last year during COVID from Sri Lanka. So that says there is an appetite of people wanting to get this. You go to Bitcoin meetups here. If you go to the blog of Run with Bitcoin, this guy who was he's traveling all over the world using Bitcoin, right? He went to pineapple farms in Sri Lanka and Varigama little rest houses which take crypto for their services, right? So that gives the idea of adoption, right? But for it to become mass, of course, that is where legislation comes in. That is where we can go to the market and clearly market this as a product where people can invest in.
Sorry, it was on mute there. Michael, you had something to say, is it?
I was just going to say that I did some research this afternoon, Sanjay. The numbers we were speaking about for Paxful in terms of 720%. Apparently, just in the first 6 months of this year, that number has been superseded in terms of Sri Lankan transactions.
There you go.
That's quite a lot. That's quite a lot.
Yeah.
I think what's adding to the whole thing is adding to this whole trend is the fact that post-COVID, lots of businesses went under. Lots of businessmen who actually had a little bit of spare cash in their hands were wondering what to do with it, and that's where this whole P2P trading kind of habit started. It's quite prevalent. We hear of, and we know of quite a few people who transfer phenomenal amounts of money or into USDT and USDC. So that's very interesting for us, and I think that shows a clear trend in terms of where the country is going. I think just to add on, Sanjay, in terms of what we should be doing about this is essentially bringing this into the mass market, right? We have been talking to the government of Sri Lanka in terms of allowing inward payments in terms of crypto, where essentially we act as a crypto payment processor, right? Where we can actually get merchants on board, get merchants acquired on a tourism basis, as a national scale, essentially convert these payments back into LKR, settle these merchants back in LKR in a local bank account. And if the government wants to tax those transactions, yes, impose a small tax on this. We have given these ideas to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka and also to the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka. We have a 6-point plan in terms of how we want to bring these benefits into the country. And we feel that this is what essentially we should be pushing forward for. We are getting good traction from the Sri Lanka Tourism Bureau and its officials who have seen this for the first time and who want to pursue this. We have a case in point in terms of numbers, right? We were just doing some numbers some time ago, about a week, 2 weeks ago, and we were looking at these booking engines, which essentially bring bookings into the country from overseas, right? Do you know that the top 3 booking engines, I'm not going to mention their names, make $15 million in profit alone on the transactions which come into the country in terms of hotel reservations, $15 million. Now that money vanishes into thin air essentially, and we are trying to see how we can actually use alternate methods of a booking engine, of a booking space, which can use crypto, which can use alternate currencies, but keep the money in Sri Lanka. The whole idea is to encourage dollar inflows into the country. Even with our regulated crypto digital asset exchange, which we are planning to do, the numbers are phenomenal. When you think of the fact that we're going to open it up to both retail and mostly institutional investors are the way forward. We find that institutional investors, like Sanjay said, because of India's tax policies, Singapore's strict regulations, and China's banning of crypto investments, we feel that the port city and setting up a regulated exchange can conservatively bring the country almost $10 billion of revenue over the next 24 months. And that's not a pipe dream. That's something we are very accurate with. We stand by that number, and we're committed to bring that in. So these are the representations we have made to the government. It's about time the government looks at alternate assets as a very important part of this economic recovery for the country.
Definitely. Well said, Michael. So I think that's quite revealing. And I think we have another question, I think from Malinda Pera, which I'd like to address. Is there a plan to develop skills of software developers in the country?
Sanjay, you want to start?
Yeah, so that is another pillar that Bridge is looking at. Where you remember maybe 15 years ago, right, when the open source community started building and we went into the universities and all that, there are some schools which are speaking to us in adapting financial education and crypto education to middle schools. I was very surprised that they are moving forward in that level. We are working with some of the blockchains to bring some of those skills into Sri Lanka. As you know, India has again pivoted from the entire world, and they're just opening up crypto development in India in a big way. You must be able to see it from your window, right? Rust developers, all of that. Coinbase started a development center there, so hired 1,000 people, right, within their first run of hiring. So Sri Lanka has that opportunity, and that is one vertical Bridge is working on to bring in this kind of education to the country as well.
I also have to just pop in there again, Sanjay, and just leave an open invite out to all of the participants on this webinar. Bridge is essentially a platform for people from various spheres to come in and actually utilize this platform to propagate technology, right? So we are encouraging, we're calling all metaverse developers, all blockchain enthusiasts, and if you're heavily into the world of NFTs and metaverse, etc., there's a lot of things we're planning to do. We have just interestingly started we have actually been trying to take one of the largest real estate projects in Sri Lanka and essentially tokenize those assets. This is potentially the first real world example of an asset in the metaverse, which is backed by a physical asset on the ground. This is a world first, which we're trying to do, and hopefully you'll see and hear a lot about it in the near future. We also feel that we can actually employ those same principles to state assets in Sri Lanka. Why cannot we not look at fractionalizing and tokenizing Sri Lankan Airlines, for instance, or for that matter, a power project? Why can't we take a 10 megawatt solar project from the government and essentially put it out there for people to lap it up? Tokenize local assets, tokenize the Hilton Colombo, for instance, which is up for investment. So these are the kind of new age solutions which I think we should be looking at. And we welcome everyone on this platform to kind of join us, send us an email, and try and work with us in terms of building that skill set, building the practice, going to government and saying, hey, we have the critical mass to actually go ahead and do this project, and to also lobby with various regulators and legislators, right? So this is something I would like to leave out there with the general public.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Then I guess the next question I have in mind is, what is the stand of the government and the central bank with regards to crypto investments? Is it legal, and more importantly, is it taxable? Could you give us a bit more insight on that?
Sanjay, let me start. You bring the technicalities into it, but I will essentially, basically, the government of Sri Lanka has been pro. They have been very, very supportive in terms of representations to them. They have helped us out along the way over the past 6 months. The Port City Economic Commission is playing a very, very vital role, a very important role in the formulation of what the Port City can do and what they can't do. Cryptocurrencies, game developers, digital nomads, gig economy specialists, new economy specialists are all areas which they're very seriously and positively looking into. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka, however, has some work to do, unenviable position, because of the simple fact that nobody has actually made a standard out of what these regulations are supposed to be, look like, feel like, right? It's every country for themselves as we stand. Like I told you earlier, lots of other countries classify cryptocurrency, some as securities, some as money service businesses, some as property but not legal tender, some as legal property, some it comes under the financial supervisory centers. For instance, South Korea, they have a separate arm which looks after cryptocurrency only. So the whole point is that it's not one size fits all for any country, and I think that's where Sri Lanka is. Sri Lanka, however, can leapfrog pretty much all of these countries if they move some of these regulations and legislations fast enough. I think that's where the blockchain committee is, and that's what they're supposed to do. That is their aegis. They're supposed to define a way forward for the whole space. There was a statement from the central bank some time ago which said, hey, we will not take risks about your crypto trading and your crypto fluctuations and your crypto losses. But that's what central banks do globally. They don't say yes, they don't say no, they just turn around and look away. Now, we're hoping that that will happen in Sri Lanka as well.
Brilliant. Yes. And then I guess that brings up the question. I think Imran has also brought it up in the chat. I was just wondering, so what are the key differences between a regulated and an unregulated exchange?
You want me to take that, Michael? Okay. Yeah. So The key difference is if you look at Binance, right? A lot of people trade in Binance. If something goes wrong, right, you lose your funds or something happens, especially in the corporate sector, right? Who do you go? Which court of law do you take Binance to look at what has happened? Nowhere, because they are not regulated in your country, nor are they regulated in Singapore or Dubai or any of these places, right? At the moment, they've got in principle approval to run. If you have a regulated exchange, they're governed by the local laws, right? So the company which is running this is answerable, just like a bank, to the court of law. And this is why you see such a growth happening in the US, right? Because most of the companies which are launched in the US are regulated. That's why Binance has Binance US, Coinbase has Coinbase US. They don't have the same amount of coins which are there in the global exchange in Binance, in the US Binance, right? Because there is regulation. For example, in Thailand, the exchange that we represent, they stopped meme coins being traded in Thailand, right? Only Doge is allowed because it was an old coin, but none of the new ones. The reason is then the government also tries to protect the users in how they work. Like there are leverage options, right? In Binance, you can leverage your $10 into 120%, right? Which when the markets crash, people lose a lot of money. In some countries where it's regulated, you can give leverage only up to 20%, right? So things like that, and also security, where you know where the funds are coming from, you know these are regulated people with proper EKYC and AML lists, because you have people who are blacklisted by the UN, by the central banks, and even the local central banks and the SEC. So those people will not be able to trade on a crypto exchange which is regulated. So that's the advantage of, it's basically consumer safety. That's what regulated exchange bring to the table.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Sanjay. And I think the next question I want to ask you is, with the current economics situation, what is the capacity and I guess the expectation that we can see from local crypto investors?
So in that, like if you look at it, right, some of these developing countries have the largest usage of crypto. As I said, India, Vietnam, countries like Nigeria, right? Why do they put their funds in crypto? Purely because to hedge against inflation, right? So if you bought USDT, for example, beginning of this year, it was going at 210 per USDT. Today, you could have exchanged it to 390 rupees, right? So that is the ability that crypto gives to your normal day-to-day user, right? It's just a hedge against inflation. It's like putting your money in, investing it in Sri Lanka. Actually, car is also a growing asset, right? You basically have land, you have real estate, but the advantage with this, it's immediate liquidity, right? You invest in property. For you to sell a land, it's not easy, right? Crypto, there's so much demand, you can sell it today, right? Within 10 minutes, you can sell 1,000 USDT to the market. So that's the advantage, right? It gives you the capacity of holding an asset which is which can be liquidated very fast. It's like holding gold, but as you know, gold again is difficult to liquidate when you want. So that is the biggest advantage crypto brings to the investor. And I will bring that point because of people are speaking about the crypto crash, right? These days it is a bear market. What you have to realize is Bitcoin was $10,000 2 years ago. Even in the worst, it's still above 25,000 US dollars. So that gives you an idea of where the markets are heading.
Sorry, I was just about to actually dovetail into that again, Anuranga, sorry, Sanjay, but essentially touching on a very important part about institutional investors and what role they play in these whole crypto exchanges and this entire economy, right? The new economy essentially encourages institutions to come in and invest in Sri Lanka in these exchanges and digital assets. Just as a case in point, in 2020 alone, assets under management through institutions have been about 15 billion US dollars, right? It shows that digital assets are definitely an asset class right now, which corporates are embracing. There is, in the Securities and Exchange Act of Sri Lanka, there is provision for corporates to essentially trade up to $50,000 overseas in other countries, in overseas companies, etc. We are actually campaigning with the government to raise that bracket up to about $2 million and allow corporates to hold digital assets as a very important part of their asset class, or their assets. So that's something we're pushing for as well, and we feel that institutional adoption of digital assets can actually lead a lot of this economic recovery in Sri Lanka very, very fast. In fact, a significant portion of the 10 billion US dollars we have committed to bring into the country over the next 24 months, have been through institutional investment.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael and Sanjay, for that. So I guess the next question that comes to mind that we can think about is, if we were to look towards legalizing crypto in Sri Lanka, what impact would that have, and how would it affect or even lead to economic recovery? I think even Sharvari Patil has asked this question. What's your view on that? What can we expect in the future for that?
So as I said, Anurag, thanks Sharvari for that question. She's joining us from India. Is actually the difference the crypto exchange makes is exactly that, because it helps inflows of a different asset class. As Michael said, we are looking at launching a real estate project using crypto, right? Dubai is the only country now which is accepting crypto for real estate. Damak, the largest real estate developer in Dubai, started accepting crypto. Why is that, right? Because they understand there is an asset class which people can use to buy property and bring that assets to the country, right? Dubai has always been 2 steps ahead when it comes to economic legislation, because when they realized oil was going away, they started real estate, they started all of that to bring in that funds into the country, right? So this is where the advantage is. It's not the crypto exchange which is going to change it per se, but the perception the country will get. What happened to El Salvador when that happened? I saw 30% tourism increase purely because of legalizing of Bitcoin, right? That is the kind of advantage that the crypto exchange brings, and not to mention the gig economy we spoke about, like PayPal. People will be able to receive funds, right, without any issue, with less tax and bank charges. So there is more liquidity coming into the country from a complete different asset class. So that is why it is important that you start somewhere, which is the regulated exchanges, which is what most of the countries are doing now. Thailand was the first to regulate this industry. Japan, the US, Europe, they're all going into it purely to bring in this asset class as a legal tender for people to use.
Perfect. Thank you. And I think we have a question from Ashan Bopitir. How will this new exchange not be another Quadro CX, and what are the measures taken in terms of transparency?
So that is the advantage of looking at the already established exchange, which has been regulated by another government, which is one of the leaders in this industry, as we said, Thailand, right? Which has been regulated by the central bank, the SEC of Thailand, and the capital adequacy of this company, right? So these are a few factors that we looked at in terms of the crypto exchange when we were introducing that. Anyone can start exchange, right? When I can get the software for $150,000 and start it tomorrow. I know there are so many people who think, can't we just buy a software and start an exchange? You can, but liquidity and the sustainability of that, right? How long have they survived? Have they managed to go through a bear market, right? Those are the questions that you look at when you really check for the feasibility of associating yourself with an exchange. And that is what we've done in terms of really doing those backward checks to ensure that this is the right fit for the country.
Pretty much everything to do with AML and terrorism financing, etc., is all a part of the BITAS exchange, which is actually being set up. So all of those best practices will be brought into Sri Lanka. Quadriga, I think Quadriga was the reference there. Quadriga was one of those cases, but we're essentially trying to make sure that we tick all the boxes in terms of governance before we actually even bring this in. And like Sanjay said, liquidity is a big part of it. We will be trying to bring in almost $100 million worth of liquidity in terms of trading volume. We're going to be accepting pretty much all the top 35, 40 coins out there, top coins, which we will probably bring in here. And yeah, so we're trying to do things as close to regulation as possible. And that's an important part of this. And that's why we need the government to step up and help us as well, because this is the time and this is the moment.
Brilliant. And I think follow-up question to that would be, what is the next 6 months going to look like in your opinion? Will there be an exchange launch? Will Binance set up in the port city? What other crypto exchanges show interest in SL, in your opinion?
Yeah, so if I was to answer that, for sure, there is going to be one exchange which is going to be up and running within the next 3 months. This would be the primary exchange which will focus on pretty much everything we've spoken on right now. We're not too sure about Binance. Yes, we have had indications from Binance and various other exchanges such as KuCoin and Gemini, who have indicated interest in pursuing an exchange at the port city. But like Sanjay said at the start of it, between their first discussions and now, it's been about 6 months. The world has moved ahead over those past 6 months. Dubai has overtaken us very, very fast. Mauritius is about to just leapfrog us. And if we don't move legislation and regulation fast, I think we're going to be left behind like everything else. Sri Lanka has a 1 in a million chance of grasping this and making our country the crypto valley of Southeast Asia. And that's actually one of our ambitions. But if you don't have proactive legislation, proactive regulation, which is on our side, we're going to be left behind just like everything else. We need technologists, we need people such as you guys out there who can actually support this, bring in effort to kind of lobby for this at various levels and make this happen. But yes, to answer your question, there is going to be an exchange and it will be in the next 3 months.
And I'll add on to that, Anuranga, because there has been a couple of questions relating to that. If we buy the crypto, can we take it into our private wallets and can we put it out and all of that? Those things will take time because, as we said, it is something that you won't have overnight. We recommended a closed loop system like PayPal started. Initially, you could buy crypto on the PayPal wallet, but you couldn't take it out, right? Then after, I think, 6 months, they now just allow it to be transferred to your private wallet. So it is a process, right? That is the difference between unregulated and regulated exchange as well. As Michael said, you have to work closely with legislators. You can't, like Singapore does, right? Singapore, there are 120 or 140 crypto exchange licenses pending. They haven't given it, right? But they gave it to DBS because that is a government control bank. So they're having a sandbox, and that is exactly what we have also proposed. But those things will change as time comes. right? So it is a process, and we've been working on it for almost a year now. So I think all of those will come, but it will take time. But initially, at least you'll be able to invest in crypto in proper market trades than going into Hawala systems and buying USDT at $400 when the current exchange rate is 350, right? So those are the different, at least that we are trying to support the people.
Definitely would be great news, actually, to move from that. So my next question would be, what will happen to Binance and investors with their money in Binance when the crypto exchanges formalize in Sri Lanka?
I don't think there will be an impact. Yes, saying that Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand all banned Binance. They told them to take the wallet off, right? However, what can happen is in Binance, if you want to take your funds out, you will have to sell it for P2P, right? So we would expect some of you to transfer your assets to this regulated exchange where you will be able to withdraw it, right, using debit card and use it for your day-to-day operations. And most crypto users use multiple exchanges, right? They don't stick to one exchange because of security risk and all that. So it is a process. We don't know to be accurately say that, you know, Binance will shut down or Binance will be blocked. I don't think so, but these things can happen because unregulated exchanges can suffer due to the lack of monitoring that it brings to the system.
Thank you for that, Sanjay. And then what do you think the effect on P2P rates and USDT purchases would be?
Yeah, so if it is regulated, you're looking at bank rates, right? Maybe bank plus a percentage higher, or even in Malaysia, it's a little, let's say 0.2% higher or something like that than the actual rate. So it will stabilize in that sense.
Definitely. I think Binance will have to go according to that along with the regulated exchange. Okay, perfect. And then we have a couple more questions on the chat. I think we're coming up to the close, but let's address a couple of them. So we have a question, I think, from Imran again. How much of the trading volume do you forecast? Does that money come to Sri Lanka?
Yes, as Michael said, we are looking at $10 billion over a period of 24 months. It will come to Sri Lanka because people will send the money here, right? And then from here only the assets will be bought because it's a locally registered company. It is not an international registered company. And we will be working with a local bank who will have accounts just like any other regulated exchange. So the funds will be coming to Sri Lanka. So there will be movement, and even the asset now will be held in a Sri Lankan company, right? That's the example I gave you with WazirX, right? India increased the tax, WazirX just moved to Dubai, which means they lost $10 million a day, right, of trading volume, which was in the country, right? So those are the pitfalls that we don't want our country to suffer from. That's why we are working very closely, as Michael said, with the legislators, showing them, you know, what's the best way to move forward, which we have got quite a lot of positive sentiments from them as well.
Actually, this was one of our requests. We actually asked the central bank to ensure that liquidity stays in the country for an extended period of time. This was one of our main reasons for bringing this exchange in, to try and bring in dollar inflows into the country. So yes, like Sanjay said, pretty much everything will stay in the country, be traded in the country, except for the minute amount which goes out to buy the asset, right? Everything else is going to stay in the country and will be within the confines of this country in a local bank account.
Because our whole focus is to help the country out of economic recovery. Our focus is not to send the money out, right? So that's what we are planning to do.
Definitely, definitely. Okay, so then another question I had was actually, if we look at maybe some of the other countries that have done this before, what was the pattern that I think commercial banks would take to adapt to this new change?
So commercial banks, as I said, to adapt to the change, some of them have bought over crypto exchanges. Some of them have invested in crypto exchanges. For example, Standard Chartered has invested in crypto asset management software company, right? As I said, Siam Commercial Bank, the largest bank in Thailand, bought 51% of controlling stake in Bitcup, which is the #1 crypto exchange in Thailand, right? So that is happening, right? Where it will be either acquisition or they will start opening omnibus accounts where their clients through their apps can buy and sell crypto and basically have exposure to that asset class through that. It is an inevitable spillover to the banks. It's like banks offering asset classes using the stock exchange, right? You have retirement funds and all of that, which portion of it is invested in the stock exchange. So similarly, and globally, Canada is front running it because they have gone even to the level of ETFs, right? Where they are actually listing Bitcoin in the stock exchange where people can buy fractionalized Bitcoin, not even having exposure to Bitcoin, right? They just buy it in the stock exchange. So those things will happen for sure if crypto becomes legislated properly in the country.
To that extent, we're also having discussions with local banks who want to get onto the whole thing. Some of them are already getting their systems and infrastructure ready in place to accept crypto as a payment mechanism on their established digital wallets and digital platforms. We have some other banks, some large banks who have actually moved towards setting up a custodian services operation within their bank, so that when this institutional adoption of crypto happens in the country, they can offer it as a custodian service to their customers. So we find that the private sector is moving very positively when it comes to this. The banking sector is adopting this. They understand that crypto is going to be a very vital part of their entire portfolio going forward, and the offering, whoever can make it the fastest, actually is the first mover. So to that extent, 3 banks are actually having very serious conversations with us, and we're getting ready for preparing their systems in the back end, which means that it's inevitable that it will come. So.
That is definitely great news, and I think reassuring to everybody who's listening through. Then we also have another question. I think we're drawing up to the last 5 minutes of the question, so please get in your questions and we'll try and address them all. But just to take one of the latest questions, any thoughts on NFTs and what we can do in Sri Lanka and how this will be related to the exchange?
Yes, so relating to the exchange, how it will happen is people will be able to buy Ethereum, right? If you are to list it in a marketplace, Rarible, it's either Binance has their own NFT. So all of that requires crypto for you to really mint your NFTs. So as you said, the first step of that will be an exchange where you can buy crypto without any issue. Then where can NFTs take you? That's another session I think we'll have to have, because as Michael said, we are looking at doing NFT projects for real estate in the country. The recent one, Korea, right? The government launched their own metaverse, right? So that is where it is heading in the world. So that I think is another complete different subject, but yes, it can have a lot of encouragement, as I said, for artists who can market their stuff, photographers, musicians, right? They can actually take their talent to the world and earn out of NFTs, which is the newest trend now, right? Which is happening.
I have to say the local ecosystem, which is already in place in terms of NFTs and metaverse, is extremely mature. We have companies here who are doing great things in the world of projects, in the world of NFT mining, in the world of metaverse. I mean, we have been talking to some young guys who have actually been coming up with some very interesting solutions and offerings on the metaverse space. They're leaps and bounds ahead of the IT industry, as it were, in the country, because they're monetizing this at breakneck speed. They're monetizing from their homes. We last met with a 24-year-old guy who has 18 people under him in 3 different countries, and his entire job is just NFTs and metaverse, right? We've come across people who are challenging the larger projects all over the world in terms of gamification and the kind of stuff they're doing. So Sri Lanka has the talent. Sri Lanka has the people who can do it. Sri Lanka has the intent to do it. Sri Lanka just doesn't have the platform to do it, and which is where I think we are trying to propagate this with the government. Somebody had asked a question which I just saw popped up, which says, what exactly does the Sri Lankan government need to trigger this entire thing? I think this economic situation is the exact trigger it needs to kind of look at alternate assets, right? Or look at alternate technologies, alternate investments. We have given a plan to the government which talks about a 6-point plan in terms of how we're going to bring in almost $25 billion worth of money into the country, or US dollars into the country, in this space alone, in the space of crypto, blockchain, and metaverse. 25 billion, if it's not too much, the government should look at it fast. But this is the moment, and this is the trigger which we needed, which is why we also thought we should set this session up, because we're looking to people out there to come and join us, to join in the entire effort to kind of take this forward with the government of Sri Lanka.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michael. Yes, we were actually looking at that. I think Mr. Michael and Sanjay, thank you so much. Both of y'all have kind of convinced us. We've learned so much from, I think, since we started off, we've learned so much about the industry and about the new exchange, and eagerly awaiting for it. And I guess that trigger is the big question we have. We're all pretty much convinced. I think it's the government. We've shown so many advantages that can come through and how we can benefit from it. So that final trigger is what we need, and maybe we're in that time that can come through. So we're definitely hoping for that. So I think we've actually gone over the allocated time that we had for today's session, but we had a lot of questions coming through. I think if there's anything, please do drop it into the chat. We would love to address them maybe in the next session, or even individually chat to you. But thank you so much for everyone for coming through. And before I go off, is there anything, Sanjay and Michael, that you want to add in before we close up for today?
Michael, I don't know, take that.
Yeah, no, all I can say is the next 3 months are going to be very interesting. Keep an eye out on this space. Please do join us, like I said, and help in the cause. But the next 3 months are going to be very interesting. We also urge the government of Sri Lanka and the legislatures to revive the efforts which were being put in a couple of months ago, the blockchain committee, etc. I think that's very important. One of the very salient points is that cryptocurrencies, NFTs, and blockchain should not fall under, for any reason, under the ICT umbrella. This needs to be looked at as a separate thing. This is not ICT. This is a revenue to the country and money to the country, alternate investment opportunities. So please do not plug it into the ICT agency or something to do with ICT. Pretty much keep this open. We urge the central bank to set up a separate committee to look after this, to look at these areas, work with governments. We can actually open up doors to various governments and what they're doing. So we would like to help with that. Essentially, yeah, look forward to this space. Very interesting, and great things are happening over the next few months. Cheers and thanks.
Great.
Thanks. Thank you for joining. Thanks, Anuranga, for a great session. Really
Thank you so much. And I think one last question. I think if we want to stay in touch with Bridge consultancy and activity, I think would it be, should I keep my eye out on socials, or would it be the WhatsApp group, or what would you say?
Socials, mostly Twitter.
You can connect to us on LinkedIn.
info@bridge-it.biz is our email address if you want to use snail mail. Yeah, please, electronic mail, sorry, snail mail is out. Well, thanks so much, everyone, and please do get in touch with us. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your time, Sanjay and Michael. Been very insightful, and I hope everyone in the audience has got their questions filled out and has learned a lot as much as I have today. So thank you so much, and have a good night. And until the next session, we await.
Good night.
See you
Thank you.
guys. Bye.
Good night.